Depending on where you live in the States, some cities are a lot more expensive to retire in than others. And when it is time to retire, finding a place that isn't too expensive is vital to living well for the rest of your life. From Boston, Massachusetts to Washington, D.C., these are the most expensive cities to retire in the U.S. New York City, New York. New York City is notorious for an outrageous cost of living and high taxes, compared to, well, anywhere else in the U.S. With the city's population reaching 9 million people, the real estate market is trying to keep up with housing demands. The vast majority of New Yorkers rent because of the fact that it's nearly impossible to buy property. Seriously, it's that expensive. The only borough out of the main 5 in NYC where people actually buy homes is Staten Island. It's considered the suburban area of New York. People live here but commute to Manhattan for work, as they get paid better there. Even if you were to be able to save up a decent amount for retirement, it can disappear pretty quickly, depending on your spending habits. That is why it is so important to start budgeting at such a young age. You gotta be disciplined and smart with your money, so that way you don't regret the financial decisions that you've made down the road. And like we've previously mentioned, New York is a very expensive city to live in. Therefore, when your quote-unquote golden years come, you're gonna be spending the same amount of money as before on basics. But you're not gonna be making your regular salary anymore. This can end up creating a major financial rift in your bank account, so you might start to rethink your spendings. Due to the fact that housing is so expensive, the price for everything else goes up too. You're going to be shelling out big money for basic needs, like food, clothing, and utility bills. Consequently, it might be a good idea to downsize. Sell your current home and move to a smaller one. Or if maybe you've rented your whole life, you might be looking into getting a smaller apartment or even share a place with a roommate. The latter might not be such a bad idea, considering that oldies do get lonely with kids out of the family nest and, living their own lives. Getting a roommate might brighten up an older person's day, knowing that there's somebody at home who can keep them company. But again, it all depends on who you get. Sometimes, if a person renting with an oldie is loud, constantly brings people over and trashes the place, this could create a nightmare situation for any retiree. New York's neighboring state is stepping on its toes as far as retirement costs are concerned, though. Trenton, New Jersey. Trenton is a very expensive city to live and retire in. New Jersey doesn't fall far behind New York, considering high taxes, expensive healthcare, and the cost of living. Compared to the national average, Trenton is about 21% more expensive than other major U.S. cities, but it's still cheaper than NYC. That's why a lot of couples who get good, stable jobs and whose median family income exceeds $80,000 prefer to move to the neighboring state in order to buy property, especially if you're planning to extend their family, settling down until retirement. According to statistics, more people are renting than owning a house in Trenton, and the rent just keeps going on up every year. Therefore, when a person retires, they're looking to rent something smaller or, in many cases, move in with kids. They have to cut the costs a lot of times as well for food and utilities so as to live comfortably. But what is good about the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, that is offering the Medicare health insurance plan as soon as a person has reached the retirement age of 65. It covers most costs associated with lab tests, doctor and hospital visits, and even offers free rides to and from the medical office to qualified retirees. There is another major city which is located on the East Coast that is considered pretty expensive, but does at least offer its own version of the Medicare plan, Mass Health. Boston, Massachusetts. It's considered one of the best cities to retire in as far as healthcare, and a low crime rate is also considered. However, the cost of living is still very high as the above-mentioned northeastern cities. Taxes are not as high as in, let's say, New York, and Social Security benefits are tax exempt, but other retirement income does get costly, not leaving retirees many funds to play with. Most mass baby boomers were able to save around $50,000 a year for retirement on average, while the millennials, well, they're not as lucky because the education costs are so outrageously high in Boston. After all, 35 top-notch colleges are located here, including Harvard, and they're notoriously expensive. Students are forced to pay off their high loans, which swallow most of their income when they do get a job after graduation. Therefore, they're just not able to put as much into a 401k savings plan and start having a much better lot in life later on down the road in their golden years. Now, if you think Boston is bad, the West Coast retirement situation might be even worse. Los Angeles, California. It was estimated that an average LA retiree has to have around $1 million in their bank account to be able to live through their golden years comfortably. And with a median LA family income being around $50,000, the retirement amount to be collected seems a little unrealistic if you ask me. The City of Angels is known for being enormously expensive. From property taxes to food, gasoline, and transportation, it is insane. And we don't just consider the Beverly Hills area, we're talking about other parts of LA too. Those are pricey as all get out. The fact that many celebrities made this city their home is also jacking up the prices. I mean, seriously, who wouldn't rub elbows with guys like Hugh Jackman, women like Britney Spears, and even those like Justin Timberlake? Just a chance to see a favorite star is worth paying the high rent. And some people believe that living in perfect weather is also worth shelling out the big bucks for. Honolulu, Hawaii. According to recent studies, Honolulu is considered the most expensive city in the United States to retire in. Because of its high cost of living, including housing, on average, many people spend about $2,300 to $2,400 a month on mortgages, food, utilities, and transportation. People need about $120,000 a year for retirement. The prices skyrocketed partially because of the tourist traffic which Hawaii accumulates. The locals are also getting overwhelmed by the influx of visitors, feeling like they don't have a place to go in their home state. Not only that, retirees often feel isolated when living in paradise. Other states are thousands of miles away, let alone other countries. Therefore, they feel stuck moving back and forth between the Hawaiian Islands and unable to change up the routine that visiting other places offer. As far as taxes, Social Security doesn't get taxed at all, but any other retirement investments do. Honolulu can be considered a modestly taxed city. Due to the pandemic, many future retirees' plans of moving to the Aloha state came crumbling down, as some were forced to take money out of their 401k plan a little earlier, right before they hit 65. Some oldies were even forced to be able to take out loans and refinance their homes just to pay for utility bills and other unexpected expenses, like healthcare, especially if they were diagnosed with coronavirus. Despite all of that, though, many baby boomers are living comfortably in Hawaii, despite the pandemic, since they were able to save when the economy was at its strongest point. However, millennials and Gen Zs might not be in luck when they retire. While still paying for college, many lost their jobs and may have bought property in the Paradise State just before the COVID-19 crisis hit. Therefore, if they can't afford to pay their monthly mortgage, then they're going to be forced to foreclose and basically go back to renting. They honestly won't have an opportunity to save much towards the golden years, as everything saved or earned ends up going to try to make ends meet. It's a very sad state of affairs, and a very similar situation can be found in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Also, D.C. is a very expensive place to retire in. It's somewhere in the top 10 of the most pricey for senior citizens to reside in. From transportation costs to high taxes, and even though the Washington salaries are among the highest in the nation, of course, it's the capital in the US, the expenses often surpass that income. You're going to be shelling out at least $70,000 a year to live decently here. Therefore, you'll need to have more than $800,000 in your savings account to be able to live comfortably and stress-free. Also, speaking about stress, there is enough of it from DC alone. Traffic problems, career obstacles, the high competition amongst government employees and politicians all make it not easy to survive here. Therefore, it might be best for retirees to think about either relocating to the Washington suburbs or maybe a nearby state like Maryland or Virginia. It's a lot more low-key to live there as well, as it's not going to break your bank for the necessities. You might have enough money on the side for entertainment as well as travel. If you've ever heard of snowbirds, you know that these are the folks who travel down south in the winter, basking in the sun during the coldest months of the year. And since Washington is not the warmest state, a lot of retirees who are among those two-winged creatures end up going to Florida, which is closer to the countless breathtaking beaches. Miami, Florida. If you've reached retirement age and consider yourself a beach lover as well, then Miami might suit you perfectly. It's got 16 lovely beaches to choose from that offer white, baby soft sand and turquoise-colored lukewarm waters to dive into, but it's sure gonna cost you a pretty penny. It's not the cheapest city to retire in at all. Just like in the case with Honolulu, Miami is flooded with vacationers, therefore housing prices are jacked up tremendously. However, according to a few census studies done on Miami's population, it was discovered that the city had over 20% of Golden Age inhabitants. Therefore, it could confidently be stated that the high cost of living doesn't stop all the snowbirds from flocking to the area to escape the harsh winter conditions. You'll have to have at least $400,000 to $500,000 in savings to live comfortably, and it is possible to find an affordable retirement community to settle in so as to fully enjoy the well-deserved rest after working hard all those years.